Okay, the subcommittee will come to order. Good morning and happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. Welcome everybody here to today's hearing. Sorry for the little delay in getting started, but just before we were to begin the hearing, the vote was called, so we were delayed for there, but we're back now, and so we still have another series of votes, but we're going to continue on and see how far we get before they call the vote. It sometimes can be longer than they anticipate, so we'll just play it by ear. So anyway, good morning and good to have you here. The primary goal of our hearing today is to examine the FY17 budget submission from the Farm and Service Agricultural Service Mission Area and its respective agencies. This is the 11th in our last hearing for the FY17 budget hearings. So we have had quite a busy month over the last several weeks, as we have heard a lot from your colleagues in the Department of Agriculture. Joining us today are Ms. Alexis Taylor, the Deputy Undersecretary for Farm and Foreign Agricultural Services Mission Area. So we welcome you being here. Mr. Dolcini, Administrator for the Farm Service Agency. Thank you for being here and welcome. Ms. Suzanne Palmieri, who is the Administrator of the Foreign Agricultural Service. Welcome. Mr. Brandon Willis, Administrator of the Risk Management Agency. Welcome to you. And of course, welcome back Mr. Mike Young, the USDA's Budget Director.
You'll call me Encyclopedia of Agriculture.
Yes. He gets to hear all of it, so he knows all of it. But to begin with, I want to welcome Ms. Taylor. It's first time to testify before our subcommittee in this current role. And I want to commend you and your team for achieving several key accomplishments over the past fiscal year, including opening new markets for American agricultural products such as South African markets to American poultry. Also beef, pork for the first time in 15 years. And the continued implementation of the 2014 Farm Bill. And also the reinstatement of the marketing loan certificates as directed by the subcommittee's FY 2016 Appropriations Bill. We have emphasized in this subcommittee over the last hearings that we've had over the last month, the last few weeks, basically 4 areas that we try to focus on and to emphasize as we move forward. First goal would be increasing oversight efficiency and the need for effective outcomes. The second is that we keep rural America vibrant. Number 3, we support American farmers and ranchers. And 4th, protecting the health of people, plants, and animals. During the hearing today, we'll have an opportunity to discuss the topics that include the Risk Management Agency's budget proposal to use mandatory crop insurance funding for its salaries and expenses accounts. We will highlight significant reductions in the U.S. commodities and maritime sea lift capability supplied to food aid programs in recent years, and concerns that this subcommittee has expressed in regard to the Modernize and Innovate the Delivery of Agricultural Systems program, better known as MIDAS. The Farm and Foreign Agricultural Service Mission Area plays a unique role at USDA and also within the United States economy. It implements the essential safety net for the American farmer through crop insurance. It maintains access to credit through farm ownership and operating loans, and oversees numerous disaster, conservation, and supplemental assistance programs. At the same time, the Foreign Agricultural Service is working in over 170 countries around the world to promote the products and the commodities these farmers produce. The mission area also represents a large portion of America's humanitarian food assistance overseas, using American taxpayer dollars to send American food on American ships to feed those that are in need. The President's budget request for the Farm and Foreign Agricultural Service Mission Area is $3.4 billion. This budget request uses a number of gimmicks and out-of-touch assumptions to achieve this funding level. For example, the budget shortchanges the food aid programs, including reductions of $116 million for the Food for Peace program and $20 million in the McGovern-Dole Food for Education program. This comes at a time when our world is facing a global refugee crisis, one that directly affects us here at home. And I'll be honest, the budget request continues to be a worrisome trend, and we have found in many mission areas under the subcommittee that's paying for discretionary programs with mandatory funding. The President's proposal to transfer $20 million of mandatory crop insurance funding to the risk management area is simply a non-starter. The budget also proposes to once again open up the 2014 Farm Bill and the crop insurance program, which provides a crucial safety net for our farmers, our ranchers, and our producers across the country. In 2015, USDA estimated that American producers would feel cuts of 36% in farm income. That's the lowest income rate in 9 years. Not only is this proposal hurtful to our agricultural economy, but it also is misguided by seeking to change a mandatory spending program through the appropriations process. With regard to the food aid programs, this budget request reflects a decline in support for key constituencies that have made up the backbone of the food aid program, the American farmers and the shippers. Changes to the traditions of these programs in recent legislation and the outright circumvention of the Food for Peace Act, largely led by this administration, have eroded the participation of these groups. This decline is reflected no more starkly than the sharp decline in the tonnage of U.S. commodities and shipping activity in the Food for Peace program alone, a drop of almost 25% in metric tons since the reforms were enacted. These reductions have been offset by the use of local and regional purchases, cash transfers, and questionable legal interpretations. This subcommittee has been a strong champion of our food aid program and their 60-plus year tradition. Last year, the subcommittee included a one-time $250 million increase for refugees and other emerging crises around the world in the Food for Peace program. We've also discussed USDA's long-awaited response to the 2014 Farm Bill provision establishing an Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs. The study required by Secretary Vilsack is in its second year of delay. The FY16 Omnibus reinforced that Farm Bill mandate and supports the establishment of this position and a new mission area. This new position would concentrate USDA's role in promoting U.S. agricultural exports, overseas imports, and supplying food aid overseas. In closing, I'd like to say that we are grateful for your missionaries' role, for your missions area, and the role they play in helping our nation's farmers and also ranchers. I look forward to, as we discuss these matters in a little more detail, and getting your input and input from the subcommittee members as we move forward. Before I recognize the ranking member, I want to say that a word about a good friend and a colleague, and that is the ranking member, Sam Farr. Sam, as you may know, he has announced his retirement, and this is his last scheduled hearing to be the ranking member this year in this Congress, and he will be sorely missed. He was first elected to Congress in 1993 in a special election, and he succeeded a young man by the name of Leon Panetta, and he went on to serve then on the Appropriations Committee and on this subcommittee, subsequently being elected. I believe I can speak for all of us that are on this subcommittee and all of that know Sam, that we really know that he has a genuine interest in looking out for those that are underprivileged. He has a real desire to fix problems that are in government, and we will miss his personal stories and also hearing about the salad bowl that he represents. As you often Sam, as you often do, you come and thank the members and thank our witnesses for their service, but we do want to thank you. I'll tell you a little sort of a side story. Right after I first got elected, I had the opportunity to travel on my first congressional trip with Sam, and we became friends on that trip. One of the stops that this was back in 1999, and we were able to go to Bosnia, and right after the war, and see what was happening there as far as really trying to restabilize that region. But one of the fun things about that story is about that trip is that my wife was about to have our first child, and she was 7 months pregnant, and we did not want to know if it was going to be a boy or a girl. We decided to let that be just a surprise, and so Sam predicted that it would be a girl, and he predicted that because every member of Congress that was on that congressional trip, their firstborn was a girl. And Sam was right. It was a girl. So I'll long remember that. But Sam, we do appreciate your service and your dedication to those not only in your district, but also California and also to the United States. So let's give him a round of applause.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I have to say that I will miss it. I think that the most constructive part of this job is subcommittee hearings. It's where you really get down, as we all talk about drilling down. This is where you drill down, and you really understand the largesse of government in all capacities, and how incredibly necessary it is for all of these programs. Can we do things better? I think so, and that's why I'm always trying to reorganize or suggest collaboration that's different. But and I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, because you've been a really good chair of this committee and given me, been able to work out any differences that we have in these budgets and stuff. And we don't always agree, but we certainly do get along together, and that's what it's all about. And I want to thank the panel. I want to thank particularly Val for your incredible service, first on the Hill here with Vic Fazio, and now in the department. And I really appreciate your career, and all of you for volunteering. I mean, most of the people in this room have volunteered to be government employees and legislative employees, and thank you all, including the staff behind me. As you said, this is my last agricultural appropriations hearing, and I'm glad to see that in this budget, a lot of items that I don't think would have ever been here. I wouldn't imagine that they would be before us today when I first got here. Particularly, as you talked about, I represent this salad bowl of the world. My county of Monterey does $4.8 billion in agriculture. They grow 100 crops. It's just one small county of the 58 counties in California. So it is really... and all those are specialty crops. And so we didn't even use that word when we got here. The word everybody talked about were minor crops, not knowing what the hell that meant. Very active in the National Organic Program. We didn't have rules yet established. I carried a bill in the state legislature to create the California Certified Organic Law. And that I remember then Alan Cranston, Senator Cranston, and Senator Leahy asking if they could use that bill as a model for the federal government. And yet when I got here, the rules hadn't been yet established for organic, the National Organic Program. So we've seen that come to fruition. We've seen the Market Access Program, the Technical Assistance for Specialty Crop Programs, the MAP and the TASC help expand conventional and organic markets around the world. We've seen within the United States, the Risk Management Agency has expanded the types of insurance for crop coverage to producers of organic and specialty crops. Those weren't available when I first arrived. So food safety is no longer a matter of buyer beware, but a modern process using most of the up-to-date technology available to ensure that the meals we prepare for our families and friends are healthy and wholesome. And now with the FY17 budget and the budget for the Foreign Agricultural Services and plans to expand its network with the opening of overseas offices in Cuba. I'm very excited. I'm going with the President and your Secretary this Sunday to Cuba. It's only 90 miles off our shore and imports the majority of all its food, most of that from other Western Hemisphere countries, not from the United States, and I think we have a great opportunity to expand those markets for all our growers in the country. On a less positive note, Secretary Vilsack said here a couple weeks ago that he described rural America as the heart and soul, not the glitz and glitter. And I don't feel that we are showing much heart or soul in proposing cutting the Food for Peace program. I disagree with the chairman on the implementation of that program. I'm not part of that. I think that we need to change it. I think that we need, when you think about how we have to grow that food, harvest that food, transport that food, then to get on overseas carriers, usually by ships, get it overseas, get it off those ships, distribute it to a center, then distribute it to the countries that are the recipients of that food, and then work it out in the local markets. That's the most expensive food in the world. And what we're missing in that is we're not helping those countries invest in their agrarian economic development, not creating the opportunity to grow and create markets and investments in their own countries. And I think that's why I'm interested in that we give some of that money to the local communities, because I'm very supportive of doing that at home. I think we need to expand we need to invest in the local and regional procurement program. We have, in my district right now, the University of California at Santa Cruz has been challenged, as all University of California campuses, to look at how you could analyze the markets, get all of the public buying, all the buying that goes for school lunches, for universities, for jails, for hospitals, for everywhere you have these public feeding programs, and find out how much of that food is grown locally. And then, if so, we just go right to those local growers and reach contracts with them. What does that do? That cuts down on these incredible transportation costs that are, because we're sending food away just to get it come right back, and we want to distribute that locally. So I think that's something we need to work on. And there is some money in that for the first time, and I'd like to hope we keep that in there. So I think it's about smarter investments, getting a better bang for our limited buck at the federal level, and I'm just awed by and I think one of the interesting things why most of us are in this committee isn't just because of a commodity. Some people are, on the Big Ag Committee. When I got there and I told them that we grow over 100 crops in my district, they just couldn't believe it, because they were growing corn or wheat or something like that. And I think it really is about what the Department of Agriculture is really about all of America, the whole of America. When you think you have overseas offices, we deal with the Commodities Future Trading Commission, we deal with poverty programs, we deal with food commodity programs, specialty crops, the insurance, the whole thing. It's just awesome department. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bearing with me all these years where I just sort of brag about my district, but I think I'm not going to even be representing it anymore, so I'll still brag about it. But thank you very much for giving me this time to open in this last meeting in the subcommittee meeting before this panel. And thank you again for your presence here today.
Thank you, Mr. Farr. Well, Deputy Undersecretary Taylor, without objection, your entire written statement will be included in the record, but at this time I recognize you for any statements you'd like to make and any open remarks before we go into the questioning series of the hearing.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, I'd like to thank both of you for your opening comments. Mr. Chairman, I would also like to just echo your comments on Ranking Member Farr's leadership on this committee and really his commitment to U.S. agriculture. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well. Taylor may not be an inherently Irish name, but I assure you it actually is. So it's a day special for me as well. We certainly appreciate the knowledge and understanding of what the Farm and Foreign Agricultural Services does and the important role that it serves for rural America. Mr. Chairman, you introduced my colleagues, so I won't do that again, but just thank them as well for being here with me today. I'd also like to thank the members of the subcommittee for being here. As you said, this is my first time testifying before your committee, and I will be here to present, along with my colleagues, the 2017 budget and program proposals for the Farm and Foreign Agricultural Services. We appreciate the challenges of today's budget environment and the need to reduce the federal deficit while striving to streamline our operations, improve efficiency, and reduce administrative costs. Today, American agriculture faces significant challenges. Falling farm income and natural disasters have increased the stress on America's farmers and ranchers. Our commodity, disaster, crop insurance, and farm credit programs are important parts of our farm safety net to American producers and our rural communities. Turning to the Farm Service Agency, the budget request for salary and expenses is $1.5 billion. FSA delivers its programs through about 2,100 offices located in all 50 states, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and Western Pacific territories. FSA provides a broad range of services, including direct loans and loan guarantees, disaster assistance, marketing assistance loans, and certain conservation programs. FSA has developed a program service delivery model which focuses on improving customer service and streamlining program delivery. For farm loans, the budget proposes a program level of about $6.7 billion, $255 million more than the 2016 level. The budget reflects our request and our commitment to support new, beginning, and veteran farmers and ranchers, including $3.9 million to support 25 new regional coordinators for outreach and mentorship opportunities. The request also includes $1.5 million to enhance the Strike Force initiative. For 2015 crop year, the Risk Management Agency, through the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation, provided about $102 billion of insurance protection. Our current projections for the 2016 crop year is that protection will be just over $100 billion. For salaries and expenses of RMA, the budget requests $67 million to support 466 employees. This would be supplemented by a transfer of up to $20 million in existing crop insurance fees into the salaries and expenses account, if authorized by Congress. RMA continued to implement key 2014 Farm Bill programs during 2015, including the supplemental coverage option, stacks, and the actual production history yield exclusion. Also, RMA is currently offering whole farm revenue protection in every county in the country for 2016. This is a first for the crop insurance program. On the international side, the budget provides $197 million for the Foreign Agricultural Service salaries and expenses, about $5 million more than 2016. For trade expansion and promotion activities, the budget includes $200 million for the Market Access Program, $34.5 million for the Foreign Market Development Program, $10 million for the Emerging Markets Program, and $9 million for the Technical Assistance to Specialty Crops Program. For international food aid, the budget includes $182 million from McGovern Dole, including $5 million for local purchases, and $175 million for Food for Progress. In addition, the budget activities includes $15 million for local and regional food aid procurement program. For PL 480 Title II, the budget provides $1.35 billion. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and we look forward to any questions you may have.
Thank you. Well, let me start out with the food aid reform issue. The President's budget once again proposes to slash spending for the food aid, including $116 million cut to the Food for Peace program. The President is also proposing to transform these programs into a cash-based assistance program. Reforms have already been enacted into law that already undermine support for these programs by cutting the amount of U.S. commodities and maritime sea lift capability used. I fear that the President's request has materialized the concerns of many past and current stakeholders about the unintended consequences associated with these proposed reforms. As I previously noted, I and others in Congress are concerned that removing the American farmer and shipper from the participation in this 60-year-old tradition of the Food for Peace program does not create intended efficiencies, but instead it will lead to cuts to the program due to simply lack of support. These reforms enacted for the Food for Peace program have reduced overall commodity and sea lift capability usage by almost 25%, as I had mentioned earlier. For example, in just the 2 years leading up to the following of the enactment of these so-called reforms, purchases of U.S. grown rice fell by 65%, U.S. wheat fell by 56%, and U.S. soy fell by 100%. Even the demand for nonprofit groups seem to have drastically dropped off. Proposals submitted to the Food for Progress program, for example, have dropped by 76% in the last 5 years. Without the support and the participation of the American farmer and the shipper, it is hard for many of us to go back to our constituencies and to justify spending more money on foreign aid programs at a time when our nation's deficit is out of control. In fact, when asked, the majority of Americans consistently choose foreign aid as a #1 place to cut funding, and that's just a fact, and I think we have to realize that. Thankfully, this subcommittee won support in FY16 omnibus for a one-time additional fund of $250 million due to exceptional circumstances with the refugee crisis in the Middle East. The budget claims that the cost that the cuts to the food aid programs are offset by efficiencies gained through the supposed reforms. Have we actually seen gains come about as a result of these efficiencies that has been acted in the recent years, including those changes in the 2014 Farm Bill? And are more people being fed now than before?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chairman. In-kind food aid is an important component of the international assistance that the U.S. government provides. It's certainly, I think, foundational to what USDA provides in McGovern-Dole and also Food for Progress. I think the 2008 Farm Bill provided pilot authority to do some local and regional pilot programs. We did find efficiencies in getting food to certain populations quicker and more affordably. The 2014 Farm Bill provided us with permanent authority to do this, and the committee last year granted us $5 million. We are working to get the rule out to utilize that $5 million. We greatly appreciated the flexibility that the Farm Bill provided, but then also the money to really utilize some of that flexibility. As I said, I think in-kind food aid it's vital to the food programs we provide at USDA. I think long-term it's going to continue to be part of the tool basket that we have. But really what we're looking for are the best use of tools to target what the situation is in each country and each crisis that's ongoing.
What feedback have you received from stakeholder groups that have traditionally been involved in the food aid programs, including the commodity groups, the maritime groups, and that you've dealt with, and also in regard to the reduction in these since these reforms have taken place?
We've worked quite closely, I think, with all the stakeholders on some of these additional flexibilities through the Farm Bill, but also through the recent WTO negotiations that went on in Nairobi and concluded in December. I was there. We actively negotiated some disciplines around food aid, and we worked to ensure that in-kind food aid, and particularly monetization, which the Food for Progress program is based upon, was able to continue to operate as it currently does today. And so we've been talking to stakeholders, I think, all along through the Farm Bill, through the budget process, but then also quite closely including the commodity groups in the WTO Nairobi decision.
Well, can you talk just a minute about the decline in the amounts of U.S. commodities purchased over the past few years?
I think part of that, obviously, when you're talking about tonnage declines, is really tied to commodity costs. And, you know, for the past few years, commodity prices have been higher than they are today. Commodity prices have certainly softened. And so that lessens the amount of overall that you can buy.
All right, my time's up. Mr. Farr?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I just Googled how much food you're talking about of our production. It's 0.01.5%. Do you think that if we just stopped the entire program that our American agriculture is going to fall apart? And what I'm surprised is that, frankly, I mean, I've been struggling with this for years, is why this ought to be a Republican issue. This is the most expensive food in the world. You want to cut, squeeze, and trim. What we're doing here is trying to feed people. And boy, do we need to. I mean, I was just getting out of a seminar about Syria. They've murdered 300,000 people in Syria. Every professional is leaving. They're leaving by boat. They go to Greece and they walk all the way to Germany with their families. These are like lawyers and doctors, professional people. And all that food that's supporting all these refugee camps is all done by USAID and aid, and comes from these programs. So it's absolutely essential that we have, you know, for these refugee camps and things, and make sure that the food's there. But I think what's happening is you got to put these countries back together, and they've got to have their agrarian countries. Their economic start, their first step is in agriculture. Even if it's in small stuff that just can feed a village so that they don't have to migrate. Or when there's, you know, I mean, it gets into all these issues with GMOs and stuff like that. I mean, when we were in Africa the irony is that Tanzania has banned GMO corn. GMO corn is the only kind of corn that'll grow in that kind of climate. And so, I mean, these are real serious issues. And we get lobbied heavily by the Seafarers Union. I voted for this amendment, and I was a member of the Seafarers Union. I was in the Merchant Marine when I was in college. They hate me. But I just think it's the right thing to do. And I know that the farmers, but I mean, frankly, we're not talking about a lot of food that if our commodity growers didn't get to buy from the U.S. for Food for Peace, they wouldn't, or other food programs, they wouldn't go bankrupt. I'd just like to have you comment on is that what your, Ms. Palmieri, is that your program?
Yes, sir, it is. Thank you.
Or my data, I just Googled it. I don't know what the real data is.
No, that's our understanding, that this is less than 1% of our exports, and we are proud to be a part of the team that's had 7 record years of exports for agriculture. So we know that we're shipping product. It's not all going through our food aid programs at this point. But we are currently looking, I just wanted to report that our Food for Progress program for FY15, which you may not have yet, we did have increased tonnage going out, and so we are mindful of the use of commodities when we can. Thank you.
How does our marketing program, is there the MAP program where we try to encourage countries to buy American agriculture in their, for example, strawberries in the southern hemisphere during their winter and our summer? Here with one hand, we're spending taxpayer money to encourage advertising of American products, and with the other hand, we're just giving this stuff all over the world with no cost. Taxpayers paying for that too, the giveaway program and the marketing program. Has there ever been, do people look at how we can use both of those programs and maybe develop better infrastructure within countries so that they can buy our food rather than getting it for free?
Congressman Farr, if I could talk to that point, I do think there is, we don't target our food aid programs based upon necessarily creating U.S. market demand. It's targeted to the need and needing populations. However, I think there is a correlation here, and I think that's partly why we have market development programs. We've got the trade promotion arm under the Foreign Agricultural Service, but also our international food aid programs and capacity building is, working to a lot of the programs we do, like Food for Progress. We monetize U.S. commodity, but then we do development work and help that country build capacity. I was just in Jordan last year, where we signed a Food for Peace wheat grant, and it will help Jordan build some of their capacity in the Jordan Valley, so they can create some of the agriculture themselves. And then the next step from being a food aid recipient to being able to have their own markets and feed themselves is eventually moving into a trading partner with the United States. That's not the target of these programs. As I said, it's to feed hungry people and target those populations, but certainly there's a reason all of this is housed under one agency at USDA.
Well, that's helpful. I appreciate that. I'm glad that there's the carrot there as well as the stick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Taylor and team, thank you for being here today. Poultry is a significant industry in Mississippi with a large economic impact within my congressional district. And as you know, contract poultry growers have often struggled for long-term solutions to provide some form of safety net in the event of other types of economic losses. I further understand that the contract grower-integrator relationship is very unique. In the last Farm Bill, Congress asked RMA to conduct studies of ways RMA could provide risk management programs for contract poultry growers. Can you update the committee on those efforts, and can you tell me what is being done within the agency to develop more long-term policy solutions to help contract growers establish a viable safety net through the USDA in the event of catastrophic losses or business interruptions?
Yeah. The Farm Bill required a handful of studies, some for poultry, a little for swine as well. Some looked at business interruption, others, I think that you referenced, focused more upon not business interruption, but catastrophic diseases. What we did with those is we had a third party we contracted out to those in the private sector who are experienced in crop insurance and have knowledge to do such a study. They went out, they talked to growers, they talked to experts in the field, and they presented us a study. We put that study out on our website middle of December. Their recommendation was that there's a lot of hurdles to go, to be very honest. Some of the exact problems they mentioned are things you alluded to as far as the relationship with the integrator and the farmer. What we have allowed, though, is when we post on our website, we want to comment, we want to continue discussions with those producers, and where it stands today is I think our door is open. We're more than willing to visit with those producers and talk about some of the hurdles in the study and perhaps talk about ways that those could be overcame. The reality is we want the crop insurance program to be a safety net for as many producers as we can in rural America, and while the study pointed out some large hurdles, that doesn't mean that we're not open to conversations on ways that those hurdles could be overcame.
Thank you. Also, Ms. Taylor, you mentioned the FSA is requesting $3.9 million for a new beginning in Veteran Farmers and Ranchers Initiative. It looks like this would include certification program to help veteran farmers pre-qualify for loans. Can you tell me a little bit more about this request and how is it different from programs that you may already have in place?
Thank you for that question, Congressman. We are looking at some of this money would go to help develop outreach coordinators. One thing that we've done on the veteran side is recently sign an MOU with the Department of Defense. And what they have the Transition Assistance Program. So all the people transitioning out of the military, all servicemen and women, come in and learn about different types of educational, career opportunities out there. Prior to just recently, agriculture wasn't part of that. USDA wasn't part of that. They have these transition assistance programs all over the country, and we're now going to be partnering with them to develop a educational course on agriculture, on farming, careers in farming and ranching, and then the tools that we have at USDA to help many of those men and women coming back who want to go back to their rural communities and farm.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much, and let me welcome you. And before I start, let me associate myself with remarks of all of our colleagues and our witnesses with regard to our colleague, Mr. Farr. He has really brought thoughtful, meaningful questions and ideas to this committee, and we're going to miss him very greatly, and I just want to add my voice to those who are saying adieu and indicating how much we really are going to miss your thoughtful dialogue here. I've got a couple of questions. One, the price loss coverage program. There are a number of farmers who participate in the price loss coverage program who have recurring difficulties in the processing of payment requests, as well as issuing of the payments themselves. In 2015, you enrolled 1.76 million farmers in the ARC and the price loss coverage programs by conducting unprecedented education campaigns. ARC and PLC are part of the farm safety net, providing assistance only when there are year-to-year crop revenue and commodity downturns. It's my understanding that FSA IT staff determined that the issue was a defect that occurred in the payment software process, which supports several of FSA's payment applications. We first contacted the department regarding this issue in December of last year, and we were assured in January that the software issues were being addressed and corrected. In fact, we were told that the software had been modified and was being tested for a late January release. But just as recently as last week, several farmers have contacted our offices to express concern that the problem still persists and have not yet been addressed. Can you tell us exactly what the status is and what the plan is to get this issue resolved?
I'd be happy to do that, Mr. Bishop. I'll work with your staff directly to get more details about the specific payment issues regarding PLC. I think across Georgia and really throughout most of the country, PLC as well as ARC have been very successful Title I programs, and the payments made to farmers in your district and farmers all over the nation have gone out without any significant difficulty, but I'm happy to follow up with your staff to get to the bottom of it.
Please do, because we continue to get recurring complaints from our constituents.
Will do.
Let me talk about cotton. Earlier this year, I joined 99 members and colleagues requesting that you make cottonseed an eligible commodity under the new price loss coverage and the ag risk coverage programs that were created under the 14 Farm Bill. Needless to say, many of us were quite disappointed with your decision and the legal interpretation that the Farm Bill doesn't provide you the authority and that you don't otherwise have the authority to make that cottonseed designation. However, as a result of some direct conversations and discussions with the Secretary, it appears that we may have an alternative temporary solution which was centered around the creation of a cotton gin cost-sharing program. Can you update the subcommittee on any progress which has been made in this area, or if there are any other developments with respect to cottonseed? And what administrative authorities does USDA have that can be used to provide assistance to cotton folks who are in dire need right now?
I appreciate that question, Congressman Bishop. We, like the committee, are quite committed to ensuring that cotton farmers have an adequate safety net, particularly as we're seeing farm income decline and commodity prices soften. Cotton is no exception to that. I actually met with some cotton producers just yesterday. We're in my office talking about the economics that they're seeing, but also what USDA may be able to do to try and help them. The Secretary was up here a few weeks ago talking about this issue. I don't know on cottonseed specifically. I don't think I have anything more to add to that. But that we are looking, as he alluded to, setting up a cotton ginning program. We're working through some of those specifics right now and what that might look like, and some of the unanswered questions we still have, and trying to work through that process. We will certainly keep the committee apprised as we make progress, and work closely with you to ensure that it is within the the administrative authority that we have today, that we can structure a program that helps the maximum amount of cotton farmers possible. But we're also willing to work with the committee on some of the restrictions on USDA's programs and really what's preventing us from providing assistance directly to cotton farmers.
Thank you. I think my time is just about expired, so I will yield back.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Taylor, and yes. My first question has to do with dairy and TPP. Canada continues to contemplate dairy measures that would move us backwards on market access and choke off hundreds of millions of dollars in dairy exports. As we prepare to consider deepening trade ties with Canada and TPP, what are we doing to make sure that they are not simply taking with one hand what they promise to give with another?
I appreciate that question, Congressman. So TPP itself, I think, has some protections in there. We got good market access, but as you alluded to, it's ensuring that then Canada lives up to that market access. We negotiated a side letter that covers a host of commodity issues on both sides, but really requires in consultation before any kind of these changes happen. We continue, though, on outside of TPP to work with our Canadian colleagues and press them on these issues as well. The Secretary Vilsack recently met with his counterpart, who's new, and brought up some of these issues that I think you're kind of alluding to. I've personally written letters to my counterparts up in Canada, and so we'd certainly see it as a priority, and we'll continue as a whole of the U.S. government to raise this issue with our Canadian counterparts.
Then I'd obviously like to thank Mr. Willis for the time you've taken meeting with me personally on some issues on crop insurance, and so I'd like to thank him for that. But on this issue of crop insurance, do you agree that during the period of 2011 to 2013, specialty crop insurance agents in California and other states received substantial reduction in the agent commissions as a result of inequities built in the cap and factor formula in the 2011 SRA?
What we saw in those years specifically was commodity prices for corn and soybeans, et cetera, rose dramatically. That reduction made it so all commissions were capped at a certain point. What happened is in 11 and 12, you saw that hit agents in areas where they had specialty crops, California, for example, quite hard. Since then, as commodity prices have moderated, we've kind of seen just the opposite, which is they're actually doing better than their counterparts across the nation. But for those 2 years, yeah, due to commodity prices, they were below. Today, I mean, just to give you one example, before the cap was set, agents in California, the A&O was 41 million. Last year it was 68 million, I'm sorry.
So some of the, and I know we've spoken on this in the past, what I'm hearing is from the guys that deal with the smallest of our farmers, and the commission that they've been basically capped at. I know the numbers have increased overall, and when you spread it out and throw an average out there, you're including large with small. But those who service the smallest farmers are the ones that seem to be hurting the most, and the ones I'm hearing from on a regular basis, and they've actually been in my office quite a bit. So appreciate the efforts you've made, and I hope to continue to work with you on that.
Thank you.
Then I've also got a question on cotton. U.S. extra long staple, which I'm more familiar with it as PIMA, but I guess that's a new name for it for me. Given the current economic state of the U.S. cotton industry, including the ELS production concentrated in the western United States, California, Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Texas, we were asking for FSA officials to work with the U.S. cotton industry and specifically on the ELS or PIMA industry to make the necessary changes to the ELS cotton competitiveness program to ensure it operates, functions as intended. This means the program will help keep U.S. ELS cotton competitive relative to ELS cotton produced in other countries by adding back the Egyptian ELS price quote that was previously removed, and also including the Chinese ELS price quote to reflect the significant production increases in that country. If there are ongoing concerns by FSA about the qualities of the cotton represented by these quotes, I encourage FSA to work with the cotton industry to make the necessary price adjustments based on quality and any other adjustments based on location differentials. Can you assure me that the FSA will work closely with our cotton industry to accomplish these important changes to make the ELS competitiveness program functional and effective once again?
Congressman, I will commit to going back and talking to staff about this and taking a look at it, and then following up with your staff.
Well, I appreciate that, but obviously the industry, those who grow the crops here in our district or in our country, play a role in this as well. So I'd appreciate it if you take some time to meet with those who are on the ground level of this too.
Yeah, absolutely, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much to everyone on the panel. Sorry to miss some of the earlier testimony, but I really appreciate the work that you do and how you help the farmers in my state. So thank you very much for that. And I think I missed some of the nice things that people were saying about our ranking member, but I'll just join in and say that we're going to miss you very much. And I've really been grateful to learn so much on this committee from you and your wonderful stories. So I hope you won't go too far away. I know you're going to be missed in your district. I hear that from people all the time. So we will miss you too. I missed also Mr. Palazzo's question, but I think he was asking, if I got it right, a little bit about the new and beginning farmer outreach program. I think that their president's request has $3.9 million for beginning farmer projects at FSA. He might have focused a little bit on veterans programs, which we're very interested in our state and have some great work going on. But I know that part of the funds will support a pilot project that will help to mediate intergenerational transfers and leasing issues between one generation and the next. In my state, land access is such a critical issue. This is really challenging. So I'm interested in that project. Can have you tell us a little more about it?
I'd be happy to do that, Ms. Pingree. Thank you. The intergenerational transfer rule for dairies in particular was an important part of the Farm Bill, and I think that that is mostly implemented at this point. Beyond that, you know, the work that FSA and agencies all across the department are doing on beginning farmer and rancher issues, I think are just as important in Maine as they are in California and every other state. And just using the microloan as an example, it's sort of the workhorse of our farm loan portfolio around the nation. We've made 18,000 of these microloans in 3 years. 70% of them have gone to beginning farmers and ranchers. So that's 18,000 American dreams that we're helping to fund in your state and in other states. And 50% of those microloan recipients are first-time customers for the Farm Service Agency. So these are people walking through our doors for the very first time. We do it with farm storage facility loans, low-cost crop insurance. NRCS does it with their conservation programs. Rural Development, rather, does it with its value-added business grants. We're really trying to provide the soup-to-nuts approach to building up the economic wherewithal for beginning farmers and ranchers around the country.
Well, all those are much appreciated and critically important, I think, particularly in regions like mine where a lot of young people wanting to get into farming but not having all the assistance that they need. So thank you for that. Just a little bit about cover crop. Thank you, Mr. Willis. I can tell you've visited all of us, or you've been everywhere to talk to people about crop insurance, and thank you all for some of the changes that we're going through. This is about cover crop termination rules. So I understand farmers have to follow a complicated set of guidelines if they want to plant a cover crop and not have it impact a farmer's eligibility for crop insurance. Those guidelines vary around the country. They require a farmer to terminate their cover crop a certain number of days before planting a cash crop. As I understand this, there's no other common farming practice that has such rules. Generally, a farmer just has to follow what the RMA calls good farming practices to ensure they don't compromise their eligibility for crop insurance indemnity. I know there are several groups that have recommended that cover crop termination rules should be decoupled from federal crop insurance eligibility, and instead cover crops should simply have the same good farming practice process that other widely used agricultural management processes are subject to. So is RMA considering getting rid of these complicated cover crop termination rules and instead considering cover crops a good farming practice? It seems to me like something that the RMA should prioritize so we don't dissuade folks from using sustainable practices like cover cropping. And as you know, particularly in sustainable and organic agriculture, cover crops are such a critical part of building up the soil, and with the tremendous amount of topsoil loss we're having in our country, I feel like we should be doing everything we can to get more of them in use.
Thank you for the question. We do fully support Cover Crops, the Risk Management Agency. In fact, a few years ago, one of the things that I think we're proud of is the fact that we sat down with NRCS, FSA, and RMA, and we tried to simplify the guidance on cover crop and also tried to make all the agencies consistent. The guidelines you talked about are available on the website. They're greatly simplified. Having said that, we have had conversations with people who wish we would continue that, and we've had discussions, and I think we want to continue those discussions. The last thing anybody wants is to have any of the agencies, being inconsistent, which we are on the same page right now, but we also want to support cover crops as a crop insurance program as well. So we're happy to continue that dialogue. We are pretty proud, though, of what came out a few years ago with the new guidelines.
So I'd be interested just to follow up with you. I'm not sure why it can't be included under good farming practices. I can see you have put a lot of time and thinking into this, but if we're hearing people raise concerns about it, it must be a stumbling block. So it would be worth, at least if you could help us understand if there's a reason we can't just take it one step further. So, but thank you for the work you've done, and thank you for your answer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Let me first ask about Ms. Taylor about the CCC and the financial statement issues. The USDA's financial statements were delayed for a second year in a row this year, due in part to issues with between the CCC and the USAID. Can you describe the specific issues with those financial statements and what those deficiencies were?
Thank you for that question, Congressman. So first, I just want to say that, obviously USDA and CCC FSA takes our financial responsibility quite seriously here. Some of what you're specifically alluding to is what the auditors call a parent-child relationship, and how we're passing money to USAID, but then not looking in and seeing exactly how they're spending it. They have their own OIG and auditors on that side of the books, but that there were some processes in there that we should be looking at from the best accounting practices, and that we were not.
And is the intention to start looking at more closely at the USAID books?
So we received this audit and the findings in mid-February. We have 60 days to respond, so that puts us about mid-April. We are actively going through each of the findings and creating a roadmap and a way to address it. I think there's short-term things we can do, and then there's a long-term strategy we're going to have to develop here. In the short term, some things we're doing is FSA, CCC recently contracted with some professional firms on audit readiness. And we also, all of USDA is really taking this quite seriously and helping. Our chief financial officer recently detailed one of his senior executives, a seasoned professional, over to fill a vacant deputy FSA CFO role. And so we're ensuring in the short term we have the resources we need to build that long-term plan.
And the FY 2015 and 2016 omnibus included directives to update the MOUs that lay out the framework for how USDA and USAID cooperate on international food programs. Can you update me on the status of whether that MOU has been updated?
to take that question? if
Sure.
that's okay. I can update you that, yes, we're having ongoing conversations currently with USAID, and we're drafting out a new MOU agreement to define the roles and responsibilities. They are productive conversations currently. We're hoping to have a report, more fully reporting to this committee.
Anytime now?
Yeah, anytime now. I mean, I'd hoped it to be here ahead of me, but it is not. So, yes, we're
Okay.
expecting a report to come through.
And just one final subject is to follow up, I think, on something the chairman asked about, which is really the attempts, it appears, to circumvent the Food for Peace Act and the fact that it's supposed to be a way of using American commodities, not American cash, to help, in foreign food programs. So right now, it seems that in the 2017 justification that was submitted, the USDA includes a provision that would allow funds made available to programs at Department of State to meet the funding requirements of the Safe Box. Obviously, those State Department funds would not be subject to the Food for Peace Act requirements that the food aid take the form of U.S. commodities grown here and, of course, shipped on U.S. flagged carriers. Is that true? I mean, can you tell me right now whether or not you're meeting the Safe Box levels with using those funds, without using those funds from the State Department?
I will need to talk with our colleagues at USAID and get you a precise answer. I don't want to answer that incorrectly today.
Okay, there's I guess it's the Community Development Fund that is also over at I guess that's also over at the State Department, that is potentially another end run around the Food for Peace Act. And look, I understand the importance of cash. And as the gentleman from California indicates, I mean, it's not a large part of our but it's the philosophy that we're helping. Say, I visited Kenya, and I like Tanzania. I'm in a food distribution center refugee camp, and the corn is not American. And I asked, why is it not American corn? Well, because they don't allow GMO corn. So let me get it straight. I mean, we're actually donating food to these countries, but they don't want the food that we actually grow here and we eat. So I've got to tell you, you could see how potentially a use of cash would be to buy some other country's corn instead of using our corn. That doesn't make sense to me. So I would just say that we have to think carefully. Well, we just have to think carefully about this, because in the end, our farmers are the most productive in the world, and when we donate food through Food for Peace, it ought to be food for peace grown by American farmers. That's just my philosophy, and I yield back.
Mr. Yoder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I talk to farmers back home, or farmers that come here to Washington, D.C., they've expressed a lot of concern related to the current state of the agriculture economy. I think we're all aware that yields are doing well in a lot of parts of the country, but the prices are down, and they may be down for a while, and farm income's off over 50%, I think, on average across the country. And so that's going to have an impact on job opportunities and economic opportunity for all of us. I know, Ms. Taylor, I read you grew up on a farm in Iowa. I grew up on a farm in Kansas. It's been in my family for generations as well. And so we have an appreciation for how hard those folks are working, and we want them to be successful. I often remark, I grew up in the 80s when half our neighbors went bankrupt, and I think those painful memories still stick with us. I don't think we're in that same situation. We're not as leveraged as the way we were in the 80s, but we don't want to go back there. So I want to ask a couple questions about how we help and what your agency does in particular, and I want to maybe focus a little bit on opening up export markets, and I know the chairman brought that up in his comments as well already. I saw that Secretary Vilsack announced the removal of some trade barriers with Peru a couple days ago. That seemed like a very welcomed result. And so I thought maybe you could talk a little about the Peru trade barriers that were removed briefly, and then maybe more broadly talk about what other markets we are specifically working on to open up the same opportunities. Because if we can get countries buying our goods, or if we're donating the goods, they're taking American goods. I tend to agree with Dr. Harris on that. What are we doing to eliminate those export barriers specifically? And then if you could also speak to our work in China in particular. That seems to be the largest untapped market for meat and poultry. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Congressman. I think, as we talk about what's going on in the farm economy, farm incomes are down over the past several years. Commodity prices have softened. I think tying that to the direct importance of trade is vital. 20% of farm income comes directly from agricultural exports. It's key to keeping our farmers and ranchers in business. We produce, we're highly efficient producers in this country, a safe, quality, affordable product, but 95% of the customers in the world live outside our borders. And so we produce far more food than we're going to consume. And so having export opportunities is vital. As you mentioned, the announcement of the secretaries in Peru as we speak, or this week he was, and Peru lifted some remaining BSE restrictions that they had on U.S. beef exports there. We continue to discuss this with markets all over the world. We've seen a lot of successes over the past several years in opening up markets that were restricting our beef because of BSE. We've had some other big successes have been Japan, Korea, most recently with South Africa, but you alluded to China, and we continue to have conversations there on a host of products that are being restrictive currently. Beef is certainly one of them and at the top, but also poultry with high-path avian influenza. We take issue with how for low-path they regionalize at a state level, for high-path they ban the whole country. We think that's not consistent with international norms and standards, and spend a lot of time trying to talk about the concept of regionalization and the strong biosafety protocols we have in the United States. Just one other point I would add is I'd be remiss if I'm talking about trade and not talk about TPP and really the importance that could mean to U.S. farm economy. 40% of the world's economy is in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And when I talk about, Japan is a very exciting market. They're, depending on the year, in our top 4, top 5 export markets for number 1 for a host of products, number 1 for pork, top 4 for dairy. And so they're important, and lowering tariffs there in the short term is going to be key. But then you can look at some other market opportunities. Vietnam, Malaysia, very exciting. They're young populations, about 43 and 45% of their population respectively is under 25 years old or younger. What that means is we have an opportunity today, as their middle class grows, to get them a taste for American food products and really grow that market as their populations grow. Today, they're hundreds of millions. In a couple years, in 20 years, are going to be measured in billions of people. And so there's a really big market opportunity in the short term, but the long term is really hard to measure. But the Farm Bureau recently came out, and I think they said that they expect 4.4 billion boost to net farm income based upon TPP. And so it's something we can't afford to pass up in the short term.
Well, I appreciate your attention to this. I know it's part of the philosophy, and as the population continues to grow in these developing countries, they're going to need more and more food products, and we're the best, most efficient growers in the world. We want to sell them American grain and meat and poultry, and that creates jobs at home, and so it ought to be something, ought to be some bipartisan unity on breaking down these export barriers and making that a top priority for the agriculture community. Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Undersecretary Taylor. It's good to see you. Congratulations on your new role. As Mr. Yoder pointed out, you're an Iowan. Of course, I like that. Administrator Dolcini, I want to talk to you about, and we've heard about, Mr. Yoder also mentioned what's going on in agriculture. In Iowa, incomes are down about a third. Yields are great, though, bumper crops. Inputs are high, commodity prices are low, and you look at the land prices, too, and how they're adjusting one way or the other in more ways down. There are many farmers who are frustrated by the high CRP rate. I want to talk about that. They say they can get more money for enrolling in CRP than to farm the ground. Some feel like they're competing with the government at times, that the government may be putting them out of business. Livestock producers are concerned as well, specifically because diluted due to CRP, some of the operations, they run into lack of grazing and pasture land, as you know. This seems to be a systemic issue, and we've seen the cycle before as commodity and land prices decline. NRCS adjusts their rental rates, as you know. It lags the land market and takes some time to catch up. So, a question for you. When FSA looks at rental rate annually, those rates aren't always adjusted. Will you please share how often the is reviewing or re-evaluating CRP rates and plans, and what causes you to act and when?
Well, we look, sir, at rental rates based on statistical information that we receive from NASS, the National Agricultural Statistical Survey. And so we typically make those changes every couple of years. Sometimes it varies a little bit, but that's about the timetable. And I'd be happy to come back and visit with you and your staff a little more specifically with regard to what we've done in Iowa.
What's the longest period of time you've waited until you've adjusted?
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head, sir. I'll have to get back to you on that. CRP, though, in general, I think has been a very successful program. It's been an important economic tool for farmers to incorporate into their overall practices, and I think we've seen a lot of activity certainly in Iowa and throughout the country with regard to, you know, the various uses of CRP, whether it's continuous programs or general sign-up or some of the other things that we're working with it.
In any way, do you also have data detailing the economic impact that this program has on some of the communities?
Perhaps ERS has done a study. I can certainly look into that and get back to you on that, sir.
We'll contact them, thank you. But jumping to another topic, Administrator, access to capital is one of the most significant barriers that beginning farmers face when they're looking to start a career in farming. FSA direct farm loans provide a crucial source of capital for beginning farmers. In light of the increasing age of farmers, we need new farmers to come in. Tell me about the 17% increase for direct operating loans that is included in your budget requests. Why do you need more money? And tell me about the importance of this funding.
Part of it is the issue that you described and that Mr. Yoder has referenced and other members of the subcommittee in terms of the overall demand on farm loans, both commercial loans as well as loans that are provided by the Farm Service Agency. We've seen a real demand in our direct program around the nation, and I think that the budget request reflects the demands that we're seeing in places like the Midwest and Texas and other parts of the nation. The programs have a very low delinquency rate and a very low default rate, so it's a very good tool for us to use to make sure that folks are taking advantage of the credit safety net that FSA offers.
Thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to yield, but before that, I want to thank my ranking member for allowing me to be part of this. Thank you for your kindness to me. This is our last hearing that you've shown me over as a new member. Thank you for your sage wisdom and advice and about how to put this all in perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not dead yet.
We're not looking for you to go anywhere anytime soon.
Let me talk a little bit about the Trade Undersecretary. In your written testimony, you talk about the importance of U.S. exports to the agriculture sector, and this is one of the few sectors of our economy that has a consistent trade surplus. In order to keep this momentum and continuation at record levels, the 2014 Farm Bill mandated the creation of an Undersecretary for Trade and Agricultural Affairs at USDA. And the new position provides a focal point at the Undersecretary level for the in-the-trenches issues, like the agencies that serve in the Foreign Agricultural Service. And it would establish USDA's proprietary role in providing international food aid overseas. The FY15 Agriculture Appropriation Bill, money was appropriated to assist in an independent study of this new position and how potential reorganization would occur. USDA was required to complete this initial study of this reorganization within 180 days of enactment of the Farm Bill. This study should have been completed in August of 14. It's been almost a year and a half and we're still not received it. Can you talk a little bit about the delay and why where Congress is it's been held up, and what progress that you've actually made on it?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chairman. As you has been alluded to, and I think Ms. Palmieri mentioned, we've seen the strongest 7 years in agricultural trade in our history of our country since we started recording it in the past 7. And so agricultural exports are obviously very vital to the U.S. farm economy. I think this is a departmental-wide question. It's not just an FFAS or FAS question. It's hard to see when you look across the 17 mission areas or 17 agencies or 7 mission areas. Many of them have some component to international activities. FAS is the coordinator, but it's not just the international components. I think it's also the domestic components as well. You would be changing leadership structures, and so I think it's a more complicated question than many people anticipated in the beginning. And that's why I think it's taking the department a little while to wrap its arms around this and really look at this question. As you mentioned, this committee directed us to do a study. We've received that study, and we're currently the department is going through that study and building upon what they provided for that report that was directed in the Farm Bill. And we're working, we hope by the end of this year, to have that to Congress.
Well, the 16 Agricultural Appropriations Law reaffirmed the USDA complete a study by June 16th of this year. And this is the second law that's been passed to require a completion of this study. And I guess my question, can you personally commit that you could deliver us a report no later than that date?
As I said, Mr. Chairman, this is a much larger question for the whole department. You're looking at a departmental reorganization, and it's much larger than what I can control or what my mission area does. What I can commit is I am certainly part of that conversation, and we have the study that the NAPA did. We're working quite hard on this. We take it quite seriously. We take whatever laws Congress pass and direct us to do quite seriously, and we're certainly committed to working through the issues and the complexity of this in a pragmatic way, and one that gives our employees certainty, but also gets Congress what they have requested.
Well, again, I think bear in mind it's been over 2 years, and this is just a study. So what I would do is like to ask for your personal commitment that you will deliver that message, and that you will do everything that you can when you get back to make sure that by June 16th that we have something. Like I said, we understand the whole thing cannot be completed. We're just asking for that study to be turned into us by the 16th.
I will certainly go back and deliver that message, Mr. Chairman, and work on the pieces that I can control.
Thank you. Mr. Farr.
I just want to make a comment on the Food for Peace. My feeling here is that Secretary Vilsack said the other day that the privilege we all have to choose a profession is because we have people growing food for us, and we don't have to go out there and grow it. We don't have to produce our food every day in our house. And it seems to me that in our Food for Peace, don't we want these poorest countries who are at risk for all kinds of international risks, security risks because of migration and starvation? Well, shouldn't we be teaching them how to fish so that they can indeed produce professionals? It's interesting that our TPP said was 40% of the world market. None of the countries we send the food to are part of that. I mean, these countries have gotten on their feet, and now they can participate and trade with us. And it seems to me that we're going to have a stronger world economy if we can work people out of poverty, and we can't work them out of poverty unless they can at least start with growing their own food and having their own local markets. That's my comment. I just want to say that it was, and Mr. Yoder was talking about breaking down export barriers. I wish our former colleague Joanne Emerson were here today. She was a very active member of this committee, a Republican from Missouri, and she and I were involved in the first bipartisan Cuba working group. And I think she sat here and everything, trying to figure out how we could break down this political barrier that we've created in the United States so that farmers in Missouri and other states could do business with Cuba. We're now there's some money in here to open up an office in Cuba. I'm very excited about that. We sold $367 million worth of goods to Cuba last year. What will this office do in Cuba? How will it help the farmers now and in the future?
Thank you for that question, Ranking Member Farr. Obviously, Cuba is an exciting market for U.S. agriculture. Our farmers and ranchers, commodity groups are very excited by the possibility to be able to not just sell more product, but eventually, when the embargo is lifted, to be able to directly market to the Cuban people. Cuba imports roughly 80% of its food, somewhere between $1.8 to $2 billion. And some years we've had a 50% market share of that. The past few years it's been declining. There's no reason when they're 90 miles off our coast that we shouldn't have the majority of that. Setting up a presence in Cuba is a priority for USDA. Certainly in the short term, as more tourists from the United States will be going, or more professionals for travel will be going to Cuba, that increases the risk of certain pests and diseases when they're coming back to the United States. So having an APHIS component there, I think, is going to be very important. It's also about rebuilding relationships. I had the ability and the opportunity to travel with Secretary Vilsack in November on his first trip to Cuba. And it was the first time a U.S. Secretary had been there since the late 50s, and really rebuilding those relationships with our Cuban counterparts and finding areas of commonality. One area of commonality that we discovered is citrus greening. We are doing a lot of work in Florida and research to combat citrus greening. Cuba has it as well, and they're doing research as well. And we've looked at it from different perspectives. There's a way to collaborate there and share what we've each learned and not kind of recreate the wheel. So I think there's a lot of different areas for us to work together in the short term, not just about selling more product, which our market development programs, because of the embargo today, are prohibited from being used there.
Thank you very much. The last question I have is, how is RMA going to expand access to crop insurance for diversified, sustainable, and organic farms, and what more can we expect to see from RMA in the near future?
Well, the employees of the Risk Management Agency over the years have gone the extra mile to bring insurance to crops, to regions, to farming practices that have not previously had crop insurance. 2009, we didn't offer crop insurance for organic crops, recognizing the price. Today, we're at about 56 crops that have that. We added 30 last year. We're creating new tools, it seems like every few months, to help these growers. We put out a new program a year and a half ago called the Whole Farm Program that works well for diversified producers. But we didn't just stop. We actually went out. We sent our team out to talk to farmers across the nation last year to find out what worked and what didn't work, and we went back to the drawing board and made some changes. The other way that we're seeing crop insurance grow is through private submissions. We have a board process where farmers can bring new products to a committee, and that committee is composed of farmers.
So you'll continue to expand that as time runs out, and we got to
I'm very confident we're going to continue to expand and to serve farmers' needs very well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, with that, you heard the bell, so we've got a vote on the floor, but we thank you for being here. We appreciate your service. We look forward to working with you, and we look forward to getting that report real soon. Thank you.